Hello. In this video I'm going to be teaching you how to draw a car um, and animate its wheels spinning, as well as give it a little bit of a bouncing animation. So first thing you're going to do is open up Flash, and this is what you will get. And we're going to just create a new ActionScript 3.0, which will take you to this scene here, scene 1 with your stage. The very first thing we need to do is just draw out our car. So over here on the right hand side on my toolbar, I'm going to grab my brush tool. And before I just come over here and start drawing, I need to make sure that all my settings and my properties for my brush tool are in place. So first thing I want to do is I want to check the color of my car. For this car, I don't want to necessarily have a stroke color, so you can see I already have that set to none. And then the fill color will be whatever color I want my car to be. I'm going to go with a nice blue car today. And then one other setting you're going to want to check is to see whether or not you are in object drawing mode or not. That's down here on the right hand side. Object drawing, I'll be going over this quite a lot in this video as well as the next video. It's very important to know whether or not you're in object drawing mode or not. So you can see right now I am in object drawing mode. Let me show you what happens when I'm in object drawing mode. Say I wanted to draw my car. So I start drawing the outline of it. And maybe I decide right here, oh, I'm going to let go of my mouse. And you can see what that did with this bounding box. That created that line that I drew as a drawing object. You can see it says drawing object up here in the top right. So now when I come to continue the rest of my car, and like this, you can see that created a second drawing object. Now, these two drawing objects, if I grab my selection tool and grab them, they are not connected together. And in many cases, that can be good. In many cases, that can be bad. You just have to know the certain situation you're in. In this situation, we're going to be drawing the outline of our car and then filling it with our paint bucket tool over here. Well, with these two objects not being connected, the paint bucket tool can't fill that because it's not a complete enclosed shape. So for this drawing of the car, you're going to want to make sure that your brush has object drawing turned off. So now if I do that same thing, where, let's see, I'll just kind of start drawing the outline of my car. Say I take my mouse off for a minute, it'll go ahead and draw that line. But when I come back in here to continue on, that new line that I just drew is now a part of the same thing. So you can see if I click on it, it'll select it. You can tell by those little polka dot looking things there that that is all one piece. And when I grab my paint bucket tool, which remembered that I'm working in blue, I can click there and that'll fill that in with the blue for me. So once you've got your outline drawn, you're going to want to put in some windows and maybe some details. When I put in my windows, I like to just erase out of here. And you can see my brush is a little bit too big. There's a couple different things I can do to fix that. I can either zoom in, and when I zoom in with Control Plus, you can see that circle of the brush stays the same size, but my car is obviously getting bigger. Or I can come over here to the very bottom of my toolbar and modify the shape of my eraser, shape and size. So I'll just pick an eraser size here, and I'm just going to, you can take this eraser to kind of clean up some of the edges that didn't quite work out, and also to draw in some windows. So I'm just going to paint out this blue here, erase out this blue so I can have a window, and maybe I'll just do one big one back here. Okay. And there's no like paint bucket for just removing colors, so you just have to kind of paint it out like this. Alright, so now we have the body of our car. We're ready to start working on the wheels, and if you have more time, you can come over here with your paintbrush tool and you could maybe add in a tail light. I'll just throw in a quick tail light real fast here. You can, add as many details as you want. You could just pause the video here, add some details, and then come back and press play when you're ready. But we want, you can see right now we've got multiple different pieces of our car. We want this all to be one entity. So with my selection tool that I have up here at the very top of my toolbar, I'm going to select the entire car. You can tell it's selected because it's got the polka dots. Make sure that you don't accidentally clip it off like this where the front isn't selected. Make sure your box draws over the entire car. And then you'll come up here to modify, convert to symbol. And we're going to call this symbol car. Just that simple, just call it car. And I recommend you call your symbols the same thing as I do in my video here. That way it'll be easier for you, as we'll have the same looking library. So when I press OK, just make sure that says movie clip. It should by default. When I press OK, you can see in my library I now have car, and when I select car, I don't get the little polka dots anymore. I get this blue bounding box. That's a sign that this is a symbol. And since it's in my library, if I select this and press delete, it just removes it off the stage. It's still here in my library. I can drag it back out. So now we're ready to draw in our wheels. To draw in our wheels, we're going to be using the oval tool. So you can see over here on my toolbar, I held down on the rectangle tool, and then I'm going to come down to the oval tool. Same thing as before, I'm going to make sure my properties are all set. I probably don't want to have red wheels. I do want to have no stroke here, and I'm going to turn my wheels into black wheels. So this is going to be like the tire portion of your wheels. So you can see right now, if I were to draw out a circle, oh wait, I did that wrong. Good thing I did that. So I actually want to switch these two. I messed up there. So if I grab my fill color, I want to set my fill color to none, and then my stroke color to black. So now you see, if I draw, what I get is an empty circle with a white line around it. This white line, I want to thicken it up so that it's about the thickness of a tire. That's done by adjusting my stroke width here. So let's just grab that and turn it up a little bit. Maybe, let's see, 12.5. Let's see what that looks like. Looks pretty good. If I come over here and draw it next to my car, it's going to go behind your car, but that's okay. Just needs to be there enough that you can get an idea of how it looks. And I think that actually looks pretty good. And just really quickly, when I was drawing that, I started about where I thought the center of my circle should be. I started dragging, and I held down Shift on my keyboard to make sure it was a perfect circle, and then I held down Alt so that it would draw the circle from that center point. So that's just a couple little clues there, little hints. You can see, even though I'm drawing this in non-object mode, it's not connecting with my car because we already converted our car into a symbol. So that's a very important aspect as well. So that's going to be my tire. Let me just go ahead and erase these other two. And we want our tire, we want our tire to be, to have some sort of a design here in the center, because we're going to animate this wheel spinning around. And if it's just a black circle, when we animate it spinning around, you're not going to be able to tell that anything is happening. So, and really quickly before I do that, you'll notice when I went to try to move this, I accidentally stretched it out like that. I'll press Control Z to undo that. If you want to move your tire around, make sure you click it first so it's selected, and then you can move it wherever you want to. Alright, so to add those details in, I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool. Oh, I need to deselect first so I can see my properties of my brush tool. And I'm just going to zoom in here, and I'll add in some sort of a detail, some sort of a hubcap, if you will. This kind of tends to be my hubcap of choice for some reason. But you can do whatever you want. I'm going to throw in just some of those bolts here. Lug nuts, I believe they're called. And again, you can take as much or as little time as you want adding in your details here. Again, you could just pause the video and then come on back once you have it all filled in. But there's my tire. It's my wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. I need to convert this into a symbol as well. So I'm going to say modify, convert to symbol. This one I'm going to call wheel. So now you can see in my library I've got my car and I have my wheel. So before we put our wheel onto our car, let's go ahead and do that spinning animation. We want that spinning animation to take place within our wheel symbol. So you can see right now, if I look in the top left hand corner, I am in scene 1. If I come to wheel here and I double click on it, you can see it takes me into the symbol, and up here in the top right hand side it says that I am now in wheel. This timeline down here that's is associated with wheel. It's not the same timeline as you see here on scene 1, and I'll kind of just, if I come out here and add some extra frames to scene 1, that'll help us so that when we come here into wheel, you can see not the same timeline. And that's exactly what we want, because just like if we have an animation out here on our scene, when we play it, when it gets to the end, it's just going to loop over and over again. We want our wheel to do the same thing. So this symbol wheel, we're going to give it its very own animation, which is just going to loop over and over and over again. So that animation that we want to give it is a spinning animation. And to give it a spinning animation, we want to give it a motion tween. However, in order to give something a motion tween, it needs to be a symbol. So since we are inside of our wheel symbol, the innards of our wheel symbol is not a symbol. You can see when I select it, I get the little polka dot things. So we're going to create a symbol within a symbol to make this work out for us. So I've selected it all again. I'm going to say modify, convert to symbol, and I like to call this one inner underscore wheel. So that way I can kind of keep the two of them separated. So now you can see I've got that blue bounding box. It indicates that I have a symbol. And now if I right click on my wheel here, I can go ahead and create that motion tween. So go ahead and select it. You can see on your timeline it adds some extra frames for you and moves your playhead. This time we're not going to be moving our object, but if we were, basically what it wants us to do is to move our object, and you can see you get that moving animation. That's not what we're doing today, so I'll press Control Z to undo that. We want this to just spin in place. Motion tweens have a feature in them that is a rotation feature. And you need to be able to see your motion tween in your properties here. So right now we're actually seeing the properties of this instance of inner wheel that we just created. So in order to see the properties of our motion tween, you just come down here and click on your last frame. So we want to leave the playhead here at the very last frame. I mean, if you click over here, you'll still get your properties, but then your animation's only going to go to there. So make sure that once you get your properties of your motion tween up here, that playhead is back on the last frame. And you can see right here your rotation options. We're just going to tell it to rotate one time. And then depending on the direction your car is facing is what will determine if your wheel spins clockwise or counterclockwise. My car was facing to the right, and so I want my wheels to turn this way, which is clockwise. So I'll just leave it at the default there. You can see if I scrub that animation now, that's in reverse, and there it is forwards. So it looks great. I'll come back out to scene 1 and just test my movie. You can see there's my wheel sitting there. If I test it now, it's going to go ahead and spin. So that's great. So now that we have that spinning wheel animation, let's go ahead and add it to our car. You can see our car in our library here does not have any wheels on it. So technically, we could just on scene 1 here, I'm going to remove these extra frames that I added real quick. On scene 1, we technically could just drag this wheel out here, and we could drag another instance out, and we would have what looked like a car, but we want this car to be one whole entity, so that if we have to move it around later, we won't have to select the whole thing to be able to move it. We can just click on it and move it without the wheel getting left behind. So I'm going to remove these off my stage for now, just because I can, and I'm going to double click into my car symbol. So you can see up here in the left hand corner, I'm now in my car symbol. So I'll just go ahead and drag out my wheel. Don't drag out your inner wheel. Remember, that's the one that doesn't have the animation on it. You want to drag out your wheel and go ahead and place those on your car. If you accidentally drew your car too large with your wheel or your car or whatever, with whatever you need to resize selected, so say I wanted to make this wheel smaller or bigger, with it selected as it is now, you can come to this third tool down, which is your free transform tool, which will let you adjust the size. And remember, if you hold down shift, it'll keep those same proportions. I think my wheels are fine, so I'm just going to leave them at the size they are. So now you see if I come into my library, if I look at my library, those wheels are now on my car. And the last thing we want to do with this animation, in order to give it kind of a driving feel, is we want this car to do a little teeny animation where it just bounces up and down. Because on the road we're going to put it on, the road will be moving and the car will be sitting still. So if we just give that a little teeny bounce, it's going to feel like it's moving. We're going to do the same thing we did with wheel, where our animation is going to occur within our car symbol on its very own timeline down here. And we have the same problem as we did with our wheel. Well, a similar problem. So our wheel was not a symbol, so we had to convert it to a symbol in order to give it a motion tween. These wheels down here are symbols, but they're not connected to our car per se. You can see we've got this wheel, we've got this wheel, and we've got our car all as separate entities. So again, we want that to be a single symbol, so we'll just drag a box over the entire thing. And we'll say modify, convert to symbol, and this one we'll use the same convention, we'll call it inner car. So now you can see that car is a single symbol, so we're ready to give it a little bouncing animation. So imagine with me what's going to end up occurring here. We're going to create a motion tween, which will give us 24 frames. So we want the car to start about here on frame 1. About halfway through, maybe on frame 13 or 14 or so, we'll move the car up just a little bit, and then back here on frame 24, we're going to want the car to come back down. When the car comes back down, we want the car to be in the exact same place that it was on frame 1, so that when our animation loops, since it's going to be looping over and over and over again, there's no jumpiness. So what I like to do for this is I'll come out here to frame 25, and I'll press F6 on my keyboard. Or if I can come out to frame 25 and say Insert, Timeline, Keyframe. And what that does is it puts a keyframe right here on frame 25 with my car in the same location as it is in frame 1. So this frame right here is just a little placeholder for us later, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. So now that I have that keyframe there that's saving my location, anywhere in these 24 frames or on my car here, as long as it's within these 24 frames, you can see when I clicked on my car it selected that. I can just right click and say create motion tween. Like I mentioned, I'm going to bring my playhead about halfway in, and I'll just drag my car up just the teeniest little bit. And I held down shift while I did that to make sure that my car went up straight. So you can see my car just, actually I'm going to make that bounce just a little bit more. I'll zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to go just up maybe about that far. So you can see if I scrub that animation, my car goes from here and then up. And then like I mentioned before, we want it to come back down from here to here. And that brings us back to this frame 25. This frame 25 is going to help us so that when we drag it back down, it will be in the same location. So with my playhead on frame 24, where the movement is going to take place, we're going to turn on what's called our onion skin. It's down here at the very bottom of our timeline. There's these three that look similar. They all do similar things. I like onion skin the most, so just go ahead and click on onion skin. And then you can see it gave you this little bracket right here over your frames. So just move that left bracket so that it only shows you frames 24 and 25. And what you end up having is you're looking at both of those frames at the same time. So you get kind of a ghosting effect here. So with your car selected, you can just use your arrow keys. I'm using my down arrow to line up those two cars. And you may want to zoom in on your tire just a little bit so you can get it nice and exact. So you can see both of those cars are now lined up. And so that means on frame 24, my car has now moved down to the same location as the car is in 25. And if you remember back, the car's location in 25 is the same location as it is in frame 1. So I'll turn off my onion skinning, and then I don't need this frame 25 anymore. That was just a placeholder, so I'll right click on it and say remove frames. So you can see if I scrub my animation, my car goes up and then it goes back down. And if I come back out here to scene 1 and drag my car out and test my movie, press Control Enter to test it, you can see my wheels are spinning around perfectly, just looping, and then my car going up and down, bouncing, is looping perfectly as well. So that is the point that you'll want to be to before you move on to the next video. And go ahead, I haven't been saving mine, that was kind of bad. You want to make sure you save it as you go. So I'll go ahead and press Control S to save it, and I would just call this something like car scene. Make sure you know where it's saving. I'm just going to save it here to my desktop. Alright, that is all, and you can go ahead once you're to this step and move on to the next video.